used to teach on a more of a carousel system with our year groups. Different classes would be doing different things at different times. That made it very difficult to track progress. So what we've moved towards is teaching the same unit at the same time. And we've established also a set of assessment focuses and a learning outcome to each unit. And also to make sure that the assessment focuses are being looked at throughout the year. I think what's particularly interesting about Jack's progress this year is with his reading. And his reading responses haven't always shown the level of understanding that he actually has. And we've had this new system in place this year. It's called Assessing Pupil Progress, which the APP is a system for tracking pupils' strengths and weaknesses and their progression across Key Stage 3. And it's a really exciting way of being able to have a dialogue so that parents and pupils and teachers can clearly see the progression that they're making. And the assessment focus grids are a really useful tool for being able to have that discussion and to show and explain to pupils how to make progress up to that next level.
I mean, how often is the assessment updated?
Okay, should be done every half term.
Every half term?
Every half term.
Right.
And what we've been using is these progress books this year. And part of that system is this self-evaluation. Right. So what happens is that before they hand in an end-of-unit piece of work, pupils will highlight using the red, amber, green system, the traffic light system, to show how confident they feel.
How do you find it's helped you?
If there's a piece of assessment that's come back, then I'm paying a lot more attention to what the teacher's put, and so I can alter that in the future, so I have more of a hold of my work.
Well, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to help you take ownership of your learning and be aware of what it is you need to do to improve it, but also how you do it. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I think I've always tried to sort of make the objectives very clear to pupils, but I suppose what's different now is I'm being much more specific in what I'm asking them to look at. So I'm not just saying, look, I want you to aim towards level 6 or level 7 or level 8. I'm really asking them to engage with exactly what that means in quite a specific level. What's the difference between level 6 and level 7?
On level 7 it doesn't say that you have to do on the author's purpose, like you have to evaluate and comment, whereas like on level 6 you have to clearly identify, but you have to do it on like year level 7 and 8, but you have to explain it in further detail.
Good, excellent, so you are starting to make that clear explanation. You are having to have close reference to a text, but it's not going to be quite as detailed, is it, as it is at level 7. You've got these words, analytic and evaluative. We're only looking at one assessment focus today. Assessment focus 6, what does it mean to write about the writer's purpose? So they're really forcing them to look at the nitty-gritty of it and how even just a few words in the phrasing can make a difference between those levels and why it makes those differences. What I've done is I put on this pink piece of paper 3 answers to the question that you have discussed. So you're familiar with this question, are you familiar with the types of answers you might give? But I want you to look carefully at the answers and I'd like you to decide what level they deserve. Okay?
It explains one of the devices as satire by saying respectable is used ironically. So that will, I'm not sure, that would make the piece of writing a high level because they're explaining how the author's using satire.
So do you think it is or not?
I think it's level 6.
I think it's level 6 because it doesn't really have many different quotations, it's just a couple, when that's not really enough to get it past level 7.
It's not really explaining it either.
No, it doesn't explain it very well.
It doesn't really show the technique and the appreciation of the techniques that have been used in, so I think it's a 6.
I suppose what the biggest impact it's had for me is in the amount of group work that I use. We teach in a mixed ability setting, so what I make sure is that every pupil has an ability group and a mixed ability group that they know that they work in.
That's an example.
They were in mixed ability groups to support each other while they're going through the analysis of the text, so that all pupils end up having access to sort of the higher order sort of thinking skills, that were present in the classroom. Then when they went into their ability groups in the second half of the lesson, they were given criteria that was specific to their target grade. So either to level 6, level 7 or level 8. So that was allowing them to work together to work towards what is their target and look at skills that they personally need to be able to use in a really focused way. So that's the question. In the extract, how does Dickens satirise the mill owners?
They bring children to school.
She's saying it's a bit corrupt.
So I found group work's really gone hand in hand with APP in the classroom.
So you can feel that might be his view on the millers, that they're dirty and they're more interested in the money side of things than they are remotely in personal things.
They're not really that bothered about how the workers feel and how they are, sort of what their conditions are.
Yeah, exactly.
On each table, I put a little bundle with paperclip of these little grids. And I want you to look at each thing in the box. It's got the same points that were on that check sheet you have. I want you to read back through your answer and I want to evaluate yourself how you have performed in that answer. Other ways that APP has helped with personalisation is that when you're assessing, you're automatically giving a picture to pupils of their strengths and weaknesses in an area. And then when you pull out a target from that, looking at their areas for development, that means that they personally know what it is they need to do to achieve a higher level. Critical evaluation of writers' purposes and viewpoints with close attention to how it's established or managed across the text.
We've done that a lot.
I feel like you've done that. So
Yeah.
can you give me an example of how you've done that?
Well, at the beginning we used Dickens, so the writer's name, and we explained how he used satire to create his own viewpoint on the mill owners' factories.
Good.
So, and we described his purpose to what he was writing about in this paragraph.
Right,
How
good.
he uses things like repetition and just other sarcasm as well.
Right, you've clearly established that at the beginning. What I think is key to this one being secure is paying close attention to how it's managed across the text. So I think you need to be thinking about is how you're developing your answer by tracing the points a writer makes across a text, that you're managing that, and that's what's really going to help you get up to that level 8. Well, I think it's really, I find it makes my teaching easier, to tell you the truth. It means that I feel much more confident about having that discussion with pupils. I know exactly what to say to them about what they need to do to improve, whereas it's always can be quite a woolly area before, and I feel like it's very specific now. I know what they need to do, they know what they need to do, we can have that discussion. It helps inform my planning, it helps me actually be able to plan lessons that are going to help that class, as opposed to be lessons which I think they should probably do. At school, the teachers put together folders to moderate as a department, and at the moment it'd usually be sort of 2 or 3 teachers. In the future might move towards the whole department doing it at the same time, and that's something we need to work on.
Right, are you all ready?
But those teachers will then put together a folder, for example, of reading, which we looked at this morning, and they have to look at the work from that term and put that together as a collection. Once they've done that, they need to complete a cover sheet which explains the context of each of the tasks that they have included. So, for example, if a piece of work has been a timed assessment, if a piece of work has been an independent homework task, just so that when we're moderating we get a sense of how that pupil works in different conditions, or how independent they are, or etc. And that really helps the moderators get a bit more of an overview. Well, this was quite an interesting folder because it showed quite a sophistication in the understanding of the text that she was asked to look at.
APP brings into focus the importance of the assignment that's been set.
Yes,
and I think that what we've got in this folder is some fairly generic book review kind of assignments.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have to remember all the time that we're using writing as a medium of assessing reading,
Yes.
which of course is going to provide a certain barrier for students, and therefore we need to think about moving away from just the conventional essay,
Yes.
and maybe looking at other ways of getting into how they're reading a
Yes,
text.
no,
And in
definitely.
particular in this one of the things I did feel was strong was the annotation
Yes.
in the bits of an autobiography.
Yes.
And I felt that was an interesting way of digging deeper into the reading processes.
Definitely. And I think that's something we need to consider, is what types of work we're putting in the folder, and maybe not just being end of assessment pieces,
Product
but
pieces.
seeing the process as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, I think that it's just as valid to pick up on things that are said in class.
Yes.
And I think that you often see those moments of clarity, moments of understanding in discussion, using speaking and listening as a tool to assess reading.
In the standards file that QC have put together with examples of different levels, there is actually a folder for reading that uses a teacher's comments based on speaking and listening responses.
So where did you feel it lay on that?
Well, I think it's a difficult one, because I think, as far as looking at the AFs, I think I would say that it's definitely at level 5 for AF2 and AF6, and therefore we agree overall with the teacher judgment, but there's some differences because of the task setting, really, not because of the people. You know, you could have someone, for example, is level 5 and they're secure at level 5 through all the assessment focuses. You might have someone who's got a bit more of a range in there, and they still would be a level 5 because, you know, that's where they're secure, even though they've got some level 6s, but they've got some level 4s as well. So that's how you could have quite a different picture there.
What do you think about the next one?
Well, I think there's still some issues with task setting, but I think what's nice here is there's a bigger range of type of task in here. And what's good as well is it gives us quite a lot of information on the cover sheet about the context of the tasks, and that helps us. So we're seeing a bit more of that process, aren't we?
And I mean, this title here, you know, how does the writer use dramatic devices to make the audience feel excited, is so much more focused in terms of the writer's craft and, you know, key words in terms of the reader's response, excited for the audience.
So we're seeing there with the dramatic device, I suppose, the language focus that makes it, how it makes the reader feel excited. We're seeing the focus on the writer's purpose. So I think because of that focus, it makes it much easier for you to kind of pull out where they're using their skills, isn't it?
Interestingly, it's a shorter piece than the pieces in the other folder, but it is much more focused, and I think the student has a much clearer sense of what it is they're trying to achieve. And I think the danger with that general title is it can fall back on the weakest form of retelling as opposed to analysing.
I think it's a really positive move forward doing the moderation, but we just need to try and sort of find ways to make that work for us as part of what we do in assessment, rather than being an extra kind of add-on.
There had been slippage into using levels for individual pieces of work, and I don't think that was helpful for the formative development of the students' work. But I think that it hasn't felt a huge change to our practice. I think it's been, again, a sort of bringing down of practice at A-level and GCSE into Key Stage 3. And I think it also validates the judgments that we make.
I mean, in many ways it's made it much easier, hasn't it? Because it means that, you know, we're able to very precisely tell pupils and ourselves what we have to be doing next. It's not about judging individual teachers and their marking. It's about us coming together as an agreement as a faculty, because ultimately when we go to county moderation, we're not going to judge the individual teacher, we're going to judge the school's judgment and whether we've all managed to come to an agreement that's on the right lines.